Technical difficulties have forced me into a weird situation here.
So, this text is a different sort of book than Apocalypse Now and Then, if for no other reason, and there are other reasons, but perhaps most clearly, it is a closer reading of the book of Revelation. It's not a commentary, of course, but I mean, the way she's kind of proceeding chapter by chapter, sometimes passage by passage, is quite different from, in fact, any of her other books. As I mentioned, she's better fits the idea or the classification of a philosophical theologian. There are other kinds, like a biblical theologian. She's not that. Systematic theologian. Well, no, because she roams around the territory so wildly, and in fact is a little hesitant often to even, I think, to claim the title theologian. Even in the pre-scroll on Roman numeral page 10, she's talking about the fact that so much in our world and cultures now seem to be moving us toward the expectation of some kind of apocalyptic ending of things, and she definitely wants to resist the idea that the book of Revelation provides some sort of map of the future. If that seems surprising to you, I don't know that it would, but I know that I took a class called Apocalyptic Literature when I was a sophomore in college in Nampa, Idaho, long ago, and it was one of the classes that really opened up new ways to think about the book of Revelation for me, including the idea that it's not a map of some distant future, but rather a kind of an underground, almost at times cartoon, because it's got so many, it thrives on imagery and numerology and symbolism, so that it's almost like an underground political theological cartoon, encouraging Christians to resist the Roman Empire and its powers, or at least not to be sucked into them. And I've stayed with that assumption all these years, and she actually touches on that a little bit in this book. On page 10, she talks about deconstruction, right at the top, requires the theological alternatives to a one ending of the world scenario on offer from fresh visions of the world. And I love this sentence: those evolving narratives mindful of sex, race, class, ecology, etc. And this is kind of typical of her. Oh, that edgy, etc. Let me become and remain a theologian. They include theologies of deep pluralism, engaged in interreligious interchange and multiple secular practices, denouncing injustice and announcing eco-social healing. These legacies of prophetic discourse persist, as does their spirited timeliness. Whatever ends of whatever times, we must confront. So rather than the end of time, whatever ends of whatever times, we must confront. I started to say, I think at the end of the last little thing, that Cobb coming here in the year 2000, it wasn't a huge thing to me, but it was a huge thing that he was coming, but it was actually offered to me as a selling point for why I should come, why I should move from Idaho. Not that I needed a lot of persuasion. But to come to Point Loma, I still remember one of my colleagues, or who was about to become my colleague, who didn't like John Cobb, by the way, and I won't go into background on that. but nonetheless, he said, hey, we have John Cobb coming in 2000, this next year. And, that was like, he was dangling it out there. And it was nice that my new colleagues down here at Point Loma actually asked me to introduce him on that first, I may have told you this, for his first lecture. What an honor, because I had been reading his stuff since 1977, and now it was the year 2000. But Cobb is a classic liberal. He's, liberal in some ways, certainly liberal in his approach to the Bible, very non-literalist for sure, probably more of a philosophical theologian as well. I just realized probably I need a little candle aroma in here, not for you, but for me. But he's had a big influence on me. Keller is more radical in some ways. Now, what I want to say about this book is you might find it some tough going at times. Now, those of you who have taken any classes, we'll start with from Heather, from Professor Ross, you've already read much more difficult things. And you've read a lot of things that might even prepare you for reading this book. Maybe not all of you had Professor Ross, but same would go for, Rob Thompson to some extent. They're different kinds of philosophers, but they both truck in philosophy. Catherine Keller is very at home in the world of philosophy, especially the kind of stuff that Professor Ross really, really likes, and which I think is great. Certainly not a critique. In my case, an observation, but a happy observation. I'm going to tell you all that there's been, no, I won't say that. I just decided I wouldn't say what I was about to say. So what I want to say now about the reading, and I know that we do have somebody presenting on Monday. It's Ava, bravely taking chapter 1. So here's what I would, not just for Ava, but for all of you, read for what you can get, right? And you might get plenty, but there are times when I'm not quite sure what she's saying. There are whole books where I can go pages where I'm not quite sure what she's saying. I get the gist, right? And I generally really like the gist. In fact, I tend to love the gist. But sometimes, man, part of it is her vocabulary is just really a dense vocabulary. She's a wonderful writer. This book is different from any of the other ones I've ever read. Again, more Bible. She will always love plays on words and puns. Watch for them. Be vigilant. You'll probably tend to see them. But what I would really heartily encourage you to do is just to look for the stuff that you really can grab onto and, underline it, or, if there are things you have questions about, make sure to take notes on those. I know our time goes fast on Tuesdays, but we'll try to honor that. I will probably not say much about the book on Tuesday. If you haven't had a chance to watch these by then, I'll probably just say you should watch these. But I'm going to encourage you to watch it before Monday, before class. I think there was another, I really like some of you will get really easily, right, on Roman numeral page 13 and her pre-scroll. She, in fact, right under that cute little squirrely thing, the little thing that marks the break in the page, she says the metaphor of apocalypse, and she's very good at the use of dashes. Really, a metaphor is too weak a notion. Why not call it metaphors? I want to alert you to that because she's going to use that throughout the book, like metaphors. Metaphors and Revelation have such power that they become metaphors, has been playing itself for a couple of millennia, the metaphor of apocalypse. Above that, about 4 lines from the top of that page, to mind, that is to give careful attention to such metaphors, is to recognize that John is not, that is the book of Revelation, is not predicting future facts, but he may be revealing fatal patterns. We read the images for meditation and for confrontation. Might facing the apocalypse, that is like looking face to face at the book of Revelation, in its ancient intensity, and I think we mostly know that it's got some real intensity at times, help us face apocalypse like a small a, face the threat of the end of things in our own time. Such facing would not mean mere recognition, submission, acquiescence. That is just kind of reading it and letting it roll over us. It means to confront the forces of destruction, to crack open, to disclose a space where late chances, last chances, remain nonetheless real chances. She wants to hold out a thread of hope. I really like this too. This is a little bit process theology-ish. This is page 15, Roman numeral 15, pre-scroll still. It's actually even more directly, she's drawing a little bit, whether directly or not, at some level, to an American philosopher of whom you may not have heard. I may have mentioned in class a time or two, whose name was William James. It's not the last time you'll hear of William James if you remain a student of anything. James was a psychologist and a philosopher, and quite good at both. Taught at Harvard University roughly 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, and was quite a public intellectual in America at that time. Wrote some really wonderful things. But when, right about the middle of this page 15, Keller writes, it just feels like there's little William James coming through. Wow. I'll just say, not because predictions of an ancient text are finally coming true. That's not why we're going to look at this. Nor because the Bible or any of its books is, quote, true at all times and all places for all people. As religious and spiritual as that might sound, and I think there's some truth to it. She goes on, truth is not something fixed in advance. Oh, that part really sounds like William James. Truth does not banish uncertainty. Don't we love it when uncertainty gets banished? Truth invites questioning. It does not transcend its context of tangled relations. You know, we do live in those. Those make us up, those tangled relations. But it may transform their meaning, the meaning of those tangled relations, if truth has something to do with honesty. Now, by the way, if I was being her editor on this, I know that she knows an incomplete sentence, and she has a lot of them in here, and that's fine. It's Catherine Keller. But you should probably avoid writing things like this. If truth has something to do with honesty, period. It's not really a sentence. Or even more abruptly, the next one, with facing, period. Not a sentence. But, you know, it's sort of literary style, and it's okay for her. Ava's going to do chapter 1 for us. Oh, then there's this recap, but let's see, apocalypse with recap on the front of it. Wow, that's a tough one. Recapocalypse. Recapping the apocalypse. I can't believe it was that hard for me. She does a kind of a quick summary, 7 points, and I'm thinking that maybe those correspond pretty much to her chapters. In fact, I think so. Yeah, of her book, 7 chapters. So Ava's going to do chapter 1, Oh Clouds Unfold, dream reading, and so she does use the language of dream reading a lot, which I would only say is sort of like recognizing sort of the dreaminess, often the nightmarishness character of the book of Revelation, and reading it, or kind of feeling it more like what it would be like to interpret a dream, rather than reading a text that's telling the future in careful detail. So you sort of feel the symbolism, the symbols, the beasts, the animals, even the numbers, that there's something here that isn't subject to just straightforward linear thinking, but more dreamy than that. And I like that. Okay, I'll stop here, and we'll see if hopefully this will help a little bit.
So I think I'll share. This is back there around the turn of that this millennium, when I was youthful and I guess regarded as a recruiting tool by Point Loma. Here's some wonderful pears by Janice. Back quite a ways now. Watercolor, but really nice. Love them. Oh, and there's that's up there. That's Jesus on Cloud 9. That's the title of the painting. I have a lot of fun art here in my office. Just as a little extra bonus. I'll explain why I had to do it this way if you're interested tomorrow.